prosecution will let you begin with an opening statement to the jury. That's how loud it is. You can take your mask off if you want.
Okay.
You can have them off if you want, but yeah, up to you.
On the morning of June 8th, Taylor Matsumoto was found dead in the master bath. The suspect, Alex, Taylor's wife, built his life on autonomous technologies and hoped to make a living on a startup for autonomous trucks. On one tragic day, Michael, Taylor's son, was found dead when his stepfather's autonomous scooter malfunctioned as he rode it to school. Because of this, Taylor turned her back on Alex and blamed him and him alone for the death of her son. Then Taylor started arguments with Taylor and no longer supported her. She even raised a group that was against everything Alex had worked for. How did Alex respond? He was upset. He hoped that that Taylor would never make it to DC to testify against his life's work. He never did like to be a part of failure, and his wife threatened to make his life, his entire life, a failure. In anger, he plotted to kill his wife. And on the night of June 7th, he did. Through the testimony of our witnesses, we will prove that Alex Matsumoto is guilty of first-degree murder. First, we will prove that Alex caused the death of Taylor, that he killed without lawful excuse, and that he had malice aforethought, and thus commit murder. Second, we will prove that Alex intended to kill Taylor, that his act was dangerous to human life, that he knew his act was dangerous to human life, and that he acted without conscious regard to human life, and therefore have malice aforethought. Lastly, we will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Alex again intended to kill, that he weighed his options, and knowing the consequence, decided to kill, and that he decided to kill before committing the act, and so prove the murder was in the first degree. Our first witness, Detective Micah Eisenberg, will prove that Alex used the golf club to murder Taylor, and he will tell us how Alex had based his entire crime on a script he had written. Then we will call up Alex's cousin, Desi Rogers. She will tell us how she saw the relationship between Alex and Taylor change dramatically after the death of Taylor's son, and how Taylor and Alex frequently got into arguments. She will also tell us about how Taylor threatened to destroy Alex's entire career. Our next witness, Dr. Jules Jackson, will show that Taylor was killed by the golf club and how she drowned after blacking out. And finally, our last witness, Casey Silver, will tell us how strained the relationship between Alex and Taylor was, and how Alex had only married Taylor for the success of his startup. Your Honor, after all the evidence has been accounted for, we ask for the verdict of guilty. Thank you.
Does the defense wish to give an opening statement? Okay, you may proceed.
Love is a very strong thing, and the relationship between a spouse, it almost can never be broken, but it can tear you apart. Now, can you imagine Alex Matsumoto in that bathroom looking at his dead wife? It broke him. And today in this court, I, along with many others, will prove to you that Alex did not commit first-degree murder. And in fact, was just a passionate, caring husband to Taylor and a loving friend, Desi Rogers and Val Glick. Today, Alex Matsumoto has been accused of first-degree murder. And I, along with the rest of the defense, am going to show you the truth, that Alex did not murder at all, and in fact, the death was just an accident. Alex was an owner of many autonomous vehicles, and was the founder of a company of them. He was originally a director for many films, and made a few friends there. Some originally a director of many films, and some are here to testify today. He was married to Taylor for 2 years, from 2018 to 2019, or 2017 to 2019, until her death. Taylor moved into Alex's mansion with her 16-year-old son, Michael. Alex had a cousin named Desi Rogers who also lived in his guest house. In January 2019, Michael died in a tragic accident using Alex's motorized scooter, which he had no permission to do. This tore Alex and Taylor apart, and even if Alex and Michael weren't blood related, he grieved a lot. Taylor was especially devastated, and this seemed to drive a stake between them. It was an autonomous vehicle that killed Michael in Taylor's mind, and she hated them now. She even joined PAAD, Parents Against Autonomous Driving. After this, Taylor and Alex seemed to fight a lot about their passions in autonomous driving, whether it was good or bad. Taylor was constantly on media, fighting to stop autonomous driving, and you could imagine that this drove a wall between Taylor and Alex. On Friday, June 7th, Taylor and Alex got in a heated disagreement. Taylor was planning to go to Washington, D.C. to protest on June 10th, and Alex had a meetup with investors on the same day. During the afternoon, on Friday, June 10th, Taylor's friend Casey Sibler, a fellow PAAD member, was going to pick her up to go to a party they held just before Taylor's department. After she left, Alex went to buy champagne and rose petals to make up for the argument they had. During that night, Alex watched a movie with Desi and Val Glick, a friend of Alex's he knew from his director's business. They watched a movie that night, and then Val left, and Desi went to the kitchen for the rest of the night. Taylor returned home at around 11 p.m. and was drunk visibly, and went to take a bath after Desi told her Alex had prepared one for her. Later that morning, Desi found Taylor dead in the tub with her clothes still on. The cause was determined to be drowning. Because of all this evidence, Alex has been accused of first-degree murder. Now, the conditions of first-degree murder involve the killing of a human with malice aforethought, or the planning of the killing with anger or intent to kill. But today, we will prove that the absolute innocence of Alex Matsumoto. Look at a loving friend and a great husband really heartlessly kill his wife. Val Glick is one of our witnesses, and she will show how Alex was a great friend who could help almost anyone in need, and went to long lengths to make others happy and satisfied. Quinn Clampett, who is Alex's housekeeper and a personal friend he grew up with. And Dr. Amari Wolpert to show the death conditions, as Taylor, instead of being hit in the head with a golf club, fell on the trail of a bathtub. This will prove the fact that Taylor's death wasn't a heartless killing, but a tragic accident that broke Alex Matsumoto. All witnesses are here to testify the fact that Alex did not kill his wife, Taylor Matsumoto. Rather, the death was an accident. Because a loving, passionate man truly does not have the power to kill. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Prosecution, this is now your opportunity to call witnesses to give testimony. Do you wish to call your first witness?
Yes, we would like to call Detective Eisenberg to the stand.
Okay, Detective Eisenberg, step on forward, please. Stand right in front of the judge's seat. Face the jury and raise your right hand. Detective Micah Eisenberg, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Yes.
You may take a seat. If you want to turn the podium, you can a little bit. And whenever you're ready, prosecution.
Hello, Mr. Eisenberg.
Hello.
You can use the microphone.
Tell us a little about yourself and what you do for a living.
Well,
You
I
should
work
take your
at,
mask off, it's hard to hear you. Hold up straight.
well, I work for the LA Police Department as a detective
How long have you been doing this?
for 13 years.
Wow, that's a long time. You must be an expert.
Yes, I guess you could say so.
When did you go to Alex's house?
Well, I went,
Just make sure. Hold it like this. There you go.
could you repeat the
Repeat
question?
the question.
When did you go to Alex's house?
Well, on June 8th at 7:55 a.m.
What did you do when you arrived to his house?
Well, when I first arrived at the house, I noticed Alex and Desi in the front of the garage. I immediately saw Alex's car, which was a light shade of gray and was plugged into the left side of the garage. I looked in through the window, and in the back seat I noticed a golf club.
Were there any other clubs in the car at the time?
No.
Okay, what happened after you checked the clubs?
Well, I went to the master bathroom and I saw Taylor's body.
What was the bathroom like?
Well, there were two sinks, a toilet, and a shower, and a bathtub. But instead of a faucet, which a bathtub usually has, it was a trough, which was 20 inches in length and 12 in width. And on the sides, they were 1 inch in width.
Okay, looking at the diagram of Exhibit B, were all these measurements the same that you saw?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, describe Taylor's body.
Well, Taylor was still wearing her black t-shirt and jeans, and I looked for any bruising around the neck and on the head. And when I parted her hair, I noticed a bruise about 4 inches in length and 1 inch in width on the back of her head.
Was there anything else around the tub?
There was a broken champagne bottle with champagne around it, and a champagne glass with champagne in it.
Okay, now looking to Exhibit B again, was the broken glass right by the tub or was it further away?
It was pretty close to the tub, yes.
Okay. What did you do when you saw the body?
Well, I asked who found the body.
And who found it?
It was Desi.
What happened after you asked Desi?
Well, I interviewed Desi.
And what did you two talk about?
Well, Desi said that she lived there, and well, Alex said she could live there, and that arguments would commonly occur in the house, and that last night was no exception. Taylor was picked up by Casey Silver and was taken to a PAD meeting, while Alex, Valglick, and Desi went to go watch a movie in the movie room.
What happened during the movie?
During the movie, Taylor got a text, Desi got a text from Taylor. By the way she was talking, you could obviously tell that she was drunk.
What happened after you interviewed Desi?
I went to go interview Alex.
And what did you two talk about?
He told me again that Arguments were very common in the house, and that last night was no exception. He
Sorry, go ahead.
And that last night was no exception.
Where did you go after the interview with Alex?
Well, I asked him if I could look around the house, and he said, "You're welcome to look around, or you're welcome to go around the house and the garage."
And what did you find in the house or garage?
There was nothing really suspicious in the house, but when I remembered the golf club in the back seat, I asked Alex for his keys. He said he didn't remember where they were, but Desi went shifting through some of the drawers, and she found the keys and gave them to me.
What was on the golf club?
Well, when I looked at the golf club, I could obviously tell that it had been bleached, and below that, there were fingerprints of Alex.
Now, looking back to Exhibit D and Exhibit E, when you checked out the injury on Taylor's head, it was the exact size. Was it the exact size of the golf club found in Alex's car?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, what did you do after you found the club and examined it?
Well, I went over to the guest house where Desi was living right now, and I asked her if I could check the office. When I went into the office, I noticed a movie script written by Alex that was about a robot who got his owner drunk and made a rose petal bath for her, and when she wasn't looking, drowned her to make it look like an accident.
And when you looked at the script at Exhibit C, there was a note on it that's saying it needs 3 liquors and a bottle of champagne. And did you find that bottle of champagne on the ground? Was that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the script that you found, was it exactly how it is written right now?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Does the defense have any questions for this witness? All right, you may proceed. Hold it nice and close when you talk.
Good afternoon, Detective Eisenberg.
Good afternoon.
Tell me how long you have been a detective.
I've been a detective for 13 years.
Why? I mean, the car did catch your eye, correct?
Yes.
When you were looking at the car, you immediately saw a golf club in the back. What were your thoughts about this?
Well, I was wondering why that there are no more clubs in the back of the car with it.
Let's continue to the bathtub. Do you think this tub was dangerous?
Yes, it could have been.
Tell me about the trough.
Well, the trough was 20 inches in length and 12 inches in width, and on the edges, they were 1 inch in width.
Do you think this would cause a head injury if someone fell on it?
This could in fact cause a head injury.
The fact that this was ground level, do you think someone could have got seriously injured?
Yes, I guess they could.
Next question. In your 25 years in law enforcement, what is your opinion on intoxicated people? How do they act?
Well, for one thing, they lose all judgment and are sometimes a little bit, it's sometimes common for them to stumble.
Are they more prone to fall?
Yes.
What do you think about a drunk person taking a bath?
Could you repeat the question?
What do you think about a drunk person taking a bath?
Well, that could be a little bit dangerous.
Did you find any evidence that Taylor was drinking the night she died?
Yes.
Let's go to the Roses and Robots movie script. Where did you find this exactly?
I found this in the office of the guest house.
Do you think that it was unusual that the script was on top and was flagged?
Yes.
Did you know that this script was written in 2010?
No, I did not.
So going back to the car, which distracted you from the beginning, you saw the club, right?
Yes.
Have you come across a lot of murder scenes where the weapon was left in plain sight?
Well, not exactly, no.
Thank you, Detective Eisenberg. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you. Witness may be dismissed. Does the prosecution have any other witnesses they wish to call? All right, Desi Rogers, please approach the judge's table. Face the jury and raise your right hand. Desi Rogers, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you may proceed to your spot. And you may begin whenever you're ready.
Hello, Miss Rogers.
Hello.
What is your relationship with Alec Matsumoto?
When we were younger, we were much closer than we are now. And as we've grown up, he's gotten much more selfish and self-absorbed than he used to be. And we're not as close as we used to be. I'm his only living relative and live in the house along with him. And I feel if it weren't for his old stepson, Michael, I wouldn't be allowed to live in the house.
I understand that Alex didn't like to be associated with failure. Did he think of his stepson as a failure, or did something happen to Michael?
If I'm being honest, no, the two seemed pretty close. But one morning, Michael had been going to school and taken one of Alex's atomic vehicle scooter bikes to school without his permission. And it wasn't fully functioning correctly, and he had drove it into a building and died.
How did this affect Taylor?
She had gotten angry and started a pad club against everything that Alex had been working for.
In what ways has Alex grown selfish?
Ever since he was younger, he seemed to get everything he wanted, and if he didn't, get angry. Most of it started off with when he inherited money from one of our more wealthy relatives who are gone now. And I wouldn't say he's the best with spending his money.
Where had you been living up to this point?
Originally, I had my own place, but I had lost my job about 8 months back and asked Alex to let me live in his house. He reluctantly agreed. I don't think he enjoys my company with let me stay at his house, and he's constantly asking me if I've found a new job or a place to stay.
Let's go back to the night before Taylor Matsumoto's death. Were Alex and Taylor getting along?
No, I had heard them arguing in the master bedroom, and something about I heard Taylor yell something about testifying, which I'm guessing was for a future PAD meeting that she would be going to at Capitol Hill in DC.
Did Alex say anything odd after Taylor left?
That night I had been sitting beside him on the couch watching a movie, and he had muttered something about wouldn't it be a shame if she didn't make it to the Capitol hearing.
So he was threatening her behind her back. Taylor left that night for her parents' against autonomous driving meeting. After she was gone, what were you and Alex doing?
That night, Alex had invited his friend Val over to watch a movie with me and him. That night, we watched one of his more unappreciated movies together.
There was a friend with the two of you. When did she leave?
Around after the movie had ended.
And before Taylor arrived at home, what happened?
Somewhere while we were watching the movie with Val, I had received a few odd texts from her. One of them being, I drank too much and want cookie dough ice cream. From the looks of the text that I showed Alex, she seemed pretty intoxicated.
And when did Alex leave to prepare the bath?
When the movie had ended, he got up and told me that he was going to prepare a rose petal bath with some liquor and champagne to make up for one of his and Taylor's more latest arguments.
Where were you when she got home?
I had gone to the guest house where Alex had been letting me stay, and I had gotten hungry, so I put in my earbuds to listen to music and walked back to the main house where I grabbed some gummy worms and put in a load of laundry and while that was going, I had heard a large bang.
How did you react to the noise?
I called out to make sure everything was all right, and Alex sounded like he had been in the master bedroom bathroom. I called out to make sure everything was all right, and he responded with everything is okay. I hadn't heard anything from Taylor, but I didn't think much of it and went back to the house.
What events took place the morning after Taylor's PAD meeting?
I had walked back to the house and was wandering around when I noticed Taylor wasn't up. So I went to check on her in the master bedroom, and she wasn't in there. I grew curious and checked the bathroom, where I found Taylor lying face down in the bathtub.
You found her face down, and then what happened?
I walked over to the fully clothed body, and I flipped her over and checked her pulse. When I didn't feel any heartbeat, I called 911, and afterwards I had gone to get Alex, who stayed in the bathroom for about a minute alone.
How did he react?
I don't exactly remember how he reacted when I had told him the news, but he stayed in the bathroom for about a minute.
So Detective Eisenberg had arrived. When he searched the property, were there any red flags you recall?
Well, first we were in the garage, and he asked to search Alex's car just in case, and Alex had said he lost the keys and they weren't where they usually were, so I started searching through some of the junk drawers in the garage and found them. So I gave them to Detective Eisenberg, and he searched the car and found a golf club.
Why was it odd to see the golf club in there?
Well, first it was alone with no other golfing equipment, and as well as it was Michael, Taylor's dead son. It was his golf club, and it usually sat in the master bedroom closet.
Because you were living in the guest house, you allowed the detective to search it. Was there anything else you allowed him to search?
I said that he could go search the office that was connected to the guest house, and we looked around, and the two doors to the office were usually locked, but the back door wasn't. So I said he could go in, and he searched through some of Alex's scripts, where he found one called Roses and Robots, and the script was about a robot that got its owner intoxicated and prepared a rose petal bath with champagne and liquor for her, and then when she had her back turned, it pushed her into the bathtub and drowned her, and claimed it as an accident.
So according to the script, Taylor would have had to have been drunk for Alex to kill her. What usually happened at the PAD meetings?
After the PAD meetings, they usually had a party afterwards where, even without Alex's permission, Taylor got drunk.
So what would Alex have been expecting when Taylor came home?
Even though each time he told her not to get drunk and she would promise that she wouldn't, she usually came home drunk, yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
All right, thank you. You can stay there, Desi, please. Defense, do you have any questions for this witness? Okay. Our normal questioner is at home right now and on Zoom, but it would be a little difficult to do that. So we're going to have Alex step in and give him his own questions. Give her his own questions.
Your name is Desi Rogers, correct?
Yeah,
You are also Alex's cousin, correct?
I am.
You and Alex have also been best friends since childhood. Is that also correct?
I wouldn't say best friends, but when we were younger, we were pretty close.
But you still liked him and he cares enough for you that he let you stay with him for a long time in his house, correct?
As far as I knew, Michael had coaxed him into letting me stay.
And then even after you lost your job, he still let you stay. And
He
after
did,
Michael-
yes.
And after that, Alex even allowed you to move in with him.
He did.
He got this house by inheritance, correct? So through all of these hard times, you would say he was still there for you, right?
He was, yes.
While you were there, you stayed in the guest house, is that correct?
I did.
There was also an office connected to this guest house, am
Yep.
I right? This was full of all of Alex's memorabilia scripts with all in his entertainment industry and his startup plans, correct?
It was.
But you specifically are sent to get things from this room. Alex never does it himself, correct?
Yes.
Alex had spent quite a while in the entertainment industry, am I right?
He did.
He was mostly focused on robot-based themes, correct?
Yes.
He also kept the same idea going when he started his autonomous vehicle startup, right?
Yes.
So during this process, Alex also fell into quick love with Taylor.
He did, yes.
When they got married, Taylor and her son Michael moved in shortly after, right?
Yep.
Alex loved Michael, correct?
He did.
And in January 2019, Michael died in a devastating accident, right?
He did, yeah.
And also Alex told Michael to not take the scooter without his permission, correct?
He did.
Yet Michael still did, and here in your witness statement it said that if it weren't for Alex, Michael would still be alive.
Yes.
So Alex did care for Michael.
Yes, he did.
Okay. You also heard, so Taylor also got mad at Alex.
He did, yeah. Or she.
You also heard her yelling, "Your robot scooter killed my son," in the quote, big fight, correct?
Yes, she did yell that.
Okay, Miss Rogers. After this, Taylor went to a PAD meeting, which she usually comes home drunk from, right?
She, but yes.
Alex was nice to Val to invite Val over to watch a movie with Alex and have some snacks, correct?
Yep.
Alex had you get the gummy worms and also his movie gigabytes from The Office, correct?
Yep.
So it is safe to say that Alex wasn't the one in this situation entering The Office.
Yes.
Alex and Val also watched the movie together, correct?
Yes, all three of us did.
Taylor also texted Alex that she was drunk.
She didn't say that specifically, but she had texted me some weird messages that suggested that she was drunk.
And since you had that phone, you showed it to him and he nodded in acknowledgement, right?
Yes.
After the movie, Alex also decided he wanted to make up for their bad fight from earlier that night.
Yes.
And to do this, he prepared a loving rose petal bath for Taylor, correct?
Yes.
Taylor also walked through the door the next moment, right?
Yep.
You could immediately notice she was extremely drunk, correct?
Yes.
She was so incredibly drunk she fell and even knocked over her vase, breaking it, correct?
I did not see her fall, but yes, she knocked over a vase.
Well, Alex was helping her get in the tub. You heard a crash and breaking of a bottle, correct?
Yes, that was the champagne bottle that I found beside the tub.
After that, you also asked, "Is everything okay?" And he responded, "Yes, everything is fine," right?
Yes, he did, but I didn't hear anything from Taylor.
So it is possible that everything could have been alright and you're just overreacting.
That could be possible, but very unlikely.
And after that, Alex left the room, correct?
Yes.
The next morning, you saw Taylor dead in the tub, correct?
Yes.
Everyone was surprised, correct?
I don't recall Alex's reaction, no. But I know I was surprised to see the body.
So you never said anything about hearing a splash from falling into the bath, correct?
No, I had my earplugs in and the washer was running.
But you heard her supposedly say something about testifying.
Yes, for what I'm guessing was the PAD meeting.
Well, in that case then, so you don't even know exactly when or how Taylor died, correct?
Correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Witness is dismissed. Prosecution, would you like to call another witness?
I will, Your Honor.
All right, who would you like to call?
Dr. Jules Jackson.
All right, Dr. Jules Jackson, approach the judge's bench. Face the jury and raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
All right, you may take your seat.
Hello, Dr. Jackson.
Hello.
What line of work are you in and what does it have to do with this case?
I'm a medical examiner and I determine the cause of death.
Have you seen any other cases similar to this one?
Yes, I have seen more than 50 cases in drowning.
What would you say the time of Taylor Matsumoto's death was?
Between 10 p.m. on June 7th and 12 a.m. on June 8th.
According to the evidence, what was going on with Taylor before and during her death?
Her blood alcohol level showed that she was drunk and it was 0.12, indicating that she could have been unstable.
Was there anything involved with the water in her lungs?
Yes, there was water in her lungs, which suggested that she could have drowned after she blacked out.
Where had blood been found and what injury had been inflicted on her?
There was blood found around the body and there was a bruise on the back of her head.
What characteristics were included with the body?
She was starting to go stiff, which would suggest which would cause rigor mortis.
With how the injury looked, how did it seem to be inflicted, and what would the injury cause?
It seemed to be that she was hit with a blunt force object, possibly a golf club, and would cause a cerebral hemorrhage and a bruise on the back of her head.
What was the size of the bruise, and was it similar to anything?
It was 1.5 inches wide and 4 inches long, which is about the same size as the golf club.
If you look to Exhibit D and Exhibit E, that's very similar to the golf club. And Your Honor, I have no further questions.
All right, thank you. Does the defense have any questions for this witness? Okay, you may approach.
Hello, Dr. Jackson.
Hello.
So Taylor died of drowning, correct?
No.
But in your witness statement, you did say that, in your witness statement, you did say that if it was not for the injury on the back of her head, she would not have died of drowning.
Well, I do believe that she could have drowned from being hit in the back of the head and blacking out and fell in the water.
Okay. You also found food particles in the water,
Yes.
right? You also said that in the time of death was between 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. the previous day from when you got there, correct?
Yes.
And you also do not believe that rigor mortis is the best at determining death?
Yes.
In your witness, you mentioned a bruise, correct?
What did you say?
You mentioned a bruise, correct?
Yes.
And it was at a slight angle?
Yes.
Was there anything else that could have caused the bruise?
She definitely could have slipped and hit her head on the trough, but she was most likely hit with a golf club.
Aren't you aware that the faucet is consistent of the exact same measurements as harm to the tissue?
Yes, but so was the golf club.
So it is still possible that it could have been from something else?
Yes, it is possible, but most likely not.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, witness is dismissed. I believe the prosecution may have one more witness. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Who are you calling to the stand?
I'd like to call Casey Silver.
All right, Casey Silver, please approach the judge's seat. Face the jury and raise your right hand. Casey Silver, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Approach.
Good afternoon, Mr. Silver.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell me how you know Taylor?
We met in January 2019. Well, I was joining PAD because my 12-year-old daughter was injured by a self-driving car. We have become quite good friends over the past year, and we have become also great work associates.
What was the thing Taylor usually talked about?
Her family.
And what did you and Taylor talk about?
Well, she talked about how much she loved Michael, because I could tell why, because she would always show me pictures and videos of them both doing fun activities like golf. They both really loved golf.
Why did Taylor want to marry Alex?
Well, he was really nice to Taylor, and he loved Taylor. He also loved Michael and treated him like his own son. But Alex also told me that he only married Taylor because of the success of the startup, and because she was so valuable, which I thought was a really weird reason to marry someone.
Do you think Taylor's relationship with Alex got worse after Michael's death?
It definitely did. Taylor kept on blaming Alex that he didn't care for Taylor's loss or Alex's death. They got in a bunch of arguments, and Taylor kept on saying that he cared more about the startup than he did their family.
What were the arguments like?
They were very heated. They both got super mad at each other. Taylor kept on thinking about getting a divorce, which I thought was a so-so idea, but I could see why. And Alex would always get mad at her for thinking about this, or when they would just think about Pad, Alex would always get mad.
What was Alex's attitude towards you after the arguments?
He got mad at me, which was weird because I had nothing to do with it. And every once in a while, he'd come up to me and say, "Why did you turn Taylor against me?" Which I had nothing to do with. I was just there because my 12-year-old daughter was injured.
Could you tell me what you were doing on June 7th at 7 o'clock p.m.?
I went to go pick up Taylor from Alex's house.
And where were you taking Taylor?
To Ben Morgan's house to discuss the upcoming PAD meeting at Capitol Hill.
What did you do after picking up Taylor?
We headed to Ben Morgan's house, and when we arrived there, Taylor got out, and when she did, she seemed super angry. I wondered why, so I asked her, and she said that Alex really didn't want her to go to Capitol Hill, and he would get really mad if she did.
How did the meeting go?
It went very good, but there was a weird spot because Taylor would not lead the meetings as she normally does. She was usually quiet, but we did get very close on getting autonomous vehicles banned.
What happened after the meeting?
We ate dinner, but I didn't see Taylor anywhere, so I was wondering where she was and what she was doing.
What was Taylor doing?
Well, after I ate dinner, I went out and saw her drinking a couple vodka sodas. I didn't keep track how much she had, but by the looks of it, it didn't look like much, so I didn't say anything.
What happened after the meeting?
We got in our car, drove back, and I dropped Taylor off at her house at 11 p.m.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
All right, thank you. Hope stay there, Casey. Defense, do you have any questions for this witness? You may come up forward and ask your questions.
Hello, is your name Casey Silver?
Yes, my name is Casey Silver.
Were you and Taylor very good friends within the last year and before her death?
Yeah, we were very good friends, and we created a small bond of working together, which was pretty nice.
Did you join the media with Taylor to a political group against autonomous technologies known as PAAD in late January 2019?
Yes, I did this because my 12-year-old daughter was injured.
You became great friends with Taylor after joining the PAAD because your 12-year-old daughter was very injured by a self-driving car?
Yes.
Did Taylor previously before worked as a technical advisor for films?
Yes, I did hear that she did work as that.
She liked technology, but later after Michael's death, she went to PAAD.
Yeah, she did that because Michael was killed by one of Alex's self-driving scooters, which I could see why.
Did Taylor want to marry Alex for the money?
No, she didn't. She said she just loved him because the way he was and how he loved Michael. But she was aware of how much money he had.
Was Michael dearly loved by both of his parents?
Yes, he was.
Did Alex care for Michael by giving gifts to him and going on vacations with him?
Yes, he did give him quite a lot of gifts, and they did go on vacations, but when they did go on vacations, I heard they would visit the golf course every once in a while.
Did Alex care for Michael? Did Taylor say that Alex did care for Michael after his death?
Well, Taylor told me that she said that Alex didn't care if Michael died, because for some reason Taylor kept on saying that he cared more about the startup instead of Michael and Taylor.
Was Taylor mostly angry at Alex for the self-driving scooter that killed Michael?
Yes.
Did Taylor and Alex have heated arguments after she joined the PAAD group?
Yes, they had quite a few.
Did Taylor also mention that there's a possibility of a divorce?
Yes.
At 7:00 p.m. on June 7th, did he go to Alex's mansion to pick up only Taylor for a PAAD meeting?
Yes.
Was Taylor upset when you picked her up?
Yes, she was.
Did Taylor say that Alex didn't want to go to Capitol Hill for the PAAD meeting?
Yes.
Was there any reason why Alex wanted her to stay?
Well, I did know that Alex was making autonomous vehicles, and we were against that, so I could see why.
Did Taylor have a few vodka sodas after she sloped at the last meeting?
Yes, she did.
Did you drop Taylor back at Alex's by 11:00 p.m.?
Yep.
Was Taylor quite clearly drunk?
Yeah, she was a little drunk.
Did you ever see her go back into Alex's house?
Yes, I did.
No, she didn't. And the next morning, did you get the news by Detective Eisenberg that Taylor is dead?
Yes, I did get the news.
Did you tell him that Taylor was very drunk the last following night?
Well, I told her she was drunk, but I never said she was very drunk.
Thank you. That is all. Your Honor, I got no more further questions.
All right. At this moment, we're going to take a short 3 minutes or so, 3 to 5 minute bathroom break, okay? And discussion about the second half. We'll call defense witnesses in a bit. All right, please be seated. Now is the time for the defense to call their witnesses to the stand. Defense, do you wish to call your first witness?
I'd like to call Alex Matsumoto.
Alex Matsumoto, please approach. Stand here, face the jury, and raise your right hand. Alex Matsumoto, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Approach.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
I am Alex Matsumoto. I am 42 years old. I was an old film producer for many sci-fi films. I was married to Taylor, and I was the father of Michael. And now I'm the owner for an autonomous driving company, which is soon to have its startup.
How did you meet Taylor?
When I used to make sci-fi films, we had to check and make sure that it was technology and approved. And Taylor was my person to help me with that sort of stuff. And seeing how good she was with autonomous driving technology and starting to get into more of that business, I asked her if she would want to join me. As we kept going along with that, soon our professional relationship evolved into a romantic one. As we were in love, we got married, and we soon started to do everything together.
Where did you and Taylor move?
Taylor moved into the mansion that I inherited from our wealthiest relative.
Did any other relatives get jealous over your inheritance?
Well, I don't exactly know, but sure you are to think that since I did get the entire inheritance, you would certainly think that some other people would rather be split more even.
How was yours and Taylor's relationship when you first moved into the mansion?
Like I said, we were madly in love. We had a very good time. It was just us two and Michael. We'd go out every weekend on golfing trips and camping, and it was just a very good time for us.
What did you like to do with Michael?
I would golf, take him out, and we would just do really whatever together. He'd watch some of my films that I made.
Did anything ever happen to Michael?
Yes. He died in a crash on an autonomous scooter that I had produced as a prototype. And although I told him he was not allowed to drive it, he used it and it malfunctioned and crashed, and he was immediately killed on impact.
How did Michael's death affect you and Taylor?
It put up a wall between us. We just never were the same together. It affected both of us very deeply, and we both had our different ways to cope about it. I decided to keep going on with autonomous driving because I didn't want anyone else, any other kid or family to be affected by autonomous driving vehicles malfunctioning. Well, Taylor decided just to go against autonomous vehicles, and she started going to her parents against autonomous driving meetings, and then frequently coming back drunk every night.
Is it your fault that Michael died?
I did make that prototype scooter. I would have never allowed Michael to ride on it though. I do take the blame. However, to make it a thing not good enough to not malfunction when it's being used.
Did you comfort Taylor during this hard time?
I truly did try to, but she just didn't want to talk to me, and once she did, it would be arguing, which we had frequently. But I would always try to help her. We'd rarely go to bed angry, and I'd always try to do stuff to make her happy again.
How did Taylor act on her day-to-day life?
She started going to these meetings more. She would be more mad at me and just always getting to arguments. And she would keep coming back drunk even though I told her not to.
How bad did this drinking get to be?
It seemed like it was every night that it was happening.
Did this cause any big arguments?
Yes, it really did.
So the night of the tragedy, what did you all do?
Well, we had another one of our heated arguments, and still knowing that she gets drunk frequently at these, and how she was going to DC soon, and not to make an embarrassment of herself, I told her like she should try not to get drunk tonight, which she responded back with, "Fine, I won't drink, you jerk." After she had left, I had told Desi how he should go get the movie and some snacks, and I invited my friend Val over to watch a movie. As we were watching that movie, in one of the more intense scenes, Desi tried to show me a text, which I presume was from Taylor, but being in the movie and I just wanted to get back to it, I waved him off so I could get back to the movie. And after it, Val left, and I decided to start getting the rose petal bath and champagne ready for Taylor so I could make up for our argument. And seeing that she was 10 minutes away, I got right on it so it would be ready right as she got back. And as she got back, I heard a crash in the foyer, and that's when she got back.
So was Taylor drunk when she came home?
Yes, I do believe so.
When did she get in the bath?
Almost immediately after she got home, and I led her to the bathroom, in which after that I left her to go take her bath in peace.
Do you know if she was enjoying it?
I don't know whether she enjoyed it or not, but thinking about 20 minutes later how she was drunk, I went to go check on her. And when I went into the bath, she still had her clothes on and she hadn't gone in yet. And she told me to get out and knocked over the champagne bottle.
Did Desi ever talk to you that night?
Yes, after that, Desi shouted out if everything was okay. And I responded back, yeah, as I was leaving the bedroom to go back. And I also mentioned to Desi how, since Taylor really wanted to go to DC, how it'd be bad if she wasn't able to go, since she really wanted to go there.
What else happened that night?
Nothing much else really. After all that, I just went back to bed.
What was the first thing that happened the next morning?
Around 7:30, Desi woke me up and told me that Taylor had died in the bathtub. And I went into the master bathroom and I saw Taylor dead facing up. Then we called the police, and trying to deal with the death of Taylor and to cope, I went into my bedroom to try to deal with it and be acceptable, and so when the police came, I could give them an accurate account of what happened.
When did Detective Eisenberg come?
He came at about 8 o'clock a.m.
What was the first thing that Detective Eisenberg did at your mansion?
The first thing he did when he got in, he asked me if he could search the property, in which I told him he could search the house and garage because that's the only places I thought that would really matter because it happened in the bathroom. And then he saw the car and how it had the Michael's golf club in it. I bleached over and cleaned up because I wanted to put it up in a display case as a memorial to Michael. And so he asked for the keys to use it as evidence. I didn't find it in the usual place, and as I was searching, I guess I just panicked and I didn't know where it was. But luckily, Desi was able to find it, so they could open up the car and use Michael's golf club as evidence.
Where did he all search?
He searched in the garage, and then after what I just said, he searched in the master bathroom where he saw Taylor, but then he also went out and searched the guest house with the office, which had all of my personal stuff in it.
Who allowed Detective Eisenberg to search the office?
Desi did.
What did Detective Eisenberg find in the office?
He found this old script of mine called Love and Robots, in which I had made many years ago. Was one of my better films that I thought, but never went to theaters. And in the scene, Robot makes their master drunk and pushes her in where she dies. So I wrote on it to get 3 bottles of liquor as props to make it seem more realistic.
When did you write this note?
A couple years ago, I think.
Is Exhibit C the note you wrote?
Yes.
Did you remember the story when he brought it up?
It took a little bit, but then after looking at it and thinking about it, yes, I do remember writing the script.
Did you ever imagine Taylor to die this way?
I never imagined Taylor to die this way at all, and I truly did hope that I would be with Taylor for the rest of my life.
Thank you, Alex Matsumoto. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Does the defense have any questions for this witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you may approach.
Hello, Mr. Matsumoto.
Hello.
You said that you love technology, right?
Yes.
You put all of your savings into autonomous trucks and other technology startup, correct?
Yes, all money I'd made, and I also took out 2 mortgages on my mansion that I inherited to pay for the startup.
When Michael joined you and Taylor at the mansion, you treated him like a son, right?
Yes, I loved Michael and Taylor, and we frequently went out and to do stuff together as a family.
Michael was killed while riding your autonomous scooter, right?
Yes, he did.
And he took it without permission, correct?
He did take it without permission. I would have never let him drive something I didn't know for sure was safe.
Taylor decided to cope with this loss by creating Parents Against Autonomous Driving, correct?
Yes, she did.
This group, created by Taylor, was against everything you had worked for in the past few years, right?
It was against autonomous driving, correct.
You said you didn't understand why she would turn from your dream, right?
It's not that I don't understand, but more as if she just found her own way to cope against the loss of Michael after being killed by an autonomous scooter.
You decided to sleep in separate rooms because of this, right?
Yes, I just wanted to give her space, seeing how she didn't really want to be with me that much anymore.
Even after this, Taylor would yell at you and arguments would erupt, correct?
Yes, frequently.
You said that after these arguments you would get upset, correct?
Yes, we both were upset in the situation. I truly did love Taylor though, and I always tried to make it up to her.
Objection, Your Honor. The witness is narrating.
We'll sustain that. Just try to keep your answers to the question that is being asked.
And Taylor wouldn't contribute anything to your cause, right?
She did not put any money toward the autonomous driving, no. It was all me.
And again, you put everything into the startup?
Yes, everything.
And Taylor knew this, correct?
Yes.
So you're telling me that Taylor turned from your dreams, raised support against your dreams, started arguments, didn't contribute anything to your cause, all the while knowing that you had put your whole life into the startup, correct?
Yes, she did do that, correct.
Again, on June 7th, you had an important meeting that Taylor was supposed to attend. And not only did she not plan to attend, but she also planned to spend the day testifying against what you had built your life on, correct?
Those were her plans, correct.
Then, after this, you specifically reminded her that you had put your whole savings into the startup, right?
Yes, I wanted her to know how much this meant to me.
Even after you reminded her, she didn't care and even made remarks about wanting a divorce and even blaming you for your son's death, correct?
Yes, she did do that and she did blame me for the death.
Later that night at 7, as Taylor was going to another PAAD member's house, you asked Taylor not to drink while there, right?
Yes, or at the very least, just not to drink to the point of being drunk.
She responded by saying, "Fine, I won't drink, you jerk," right?
She did say that, correct.
Then after all of this, you said that it would be too bad if Taylor missed the flight to DC, correct?
Yes, I said that to Desi. I really wanted her to be able to go there, and I thought it'd be too bad if she didn't make it.
Later you started watching a movie, right?
Correct.
During the movie, Desi showed you a text from Casey, right?
I presumed that it was from Taylor, and I don't really know because I did not see the text and I waved her off because I wanted to go back to watch the movie.
And Desi put the phone right in your hands and you didn't see it, correct?
Yes, I did ignore the text and I gave it right back to her.
So just to clarify, you didn't even look at it?
I did not even look at it, correct.
After the movie, you were going to prepare a rose petal bath and champagne for Taylor, right?
Yes, I wanted to make up for the argument.
Soon after, when Taylor returned home, you said that she was drunk, even though she said she wouldn't drink, correct?
Yes, she had gotten drunk.
And you know that it isn't safe to have a drunk person alone in a bath, right?
Yes, I know that, and that's why I went to go and check on her. And if she was too drunk, I would have taken out the champagne.
When you went to check on her, you walked through the closet, right? That being, this closet right here?
Yes, correct.
Oh. When Desi called to check on you, you shouted that everything was all right, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you shouted even though it was 11 p.m. and Desi was the only person in the house, correct?
No, Taylor was also in the house.
At this time, you knew Taylor was drunk, right?
Yes, Taylor was drunk.
You loved your wife, right?
Yes, I did.
Surely a nice, loving husband wouldn't leave his wife to drown in a bathtub. And yet you left her in the bathroom, knowing full well that she was drunk and that it wasn't safe to have a drunk person left in the bathtub. Am I correct?
Well,
What is the objection?
The questionnaire is using a lot of opinion in his questions.
Overruled. Continue with the question. Or you may answer that question.
yes, I knew she had been drinking, but seeing how 20 minutes after she went to the bathroom at first and how she still had her clothes on, I wrongfully assumed that she was not going to go into the bath. And once she had told me to get out, I obeyed her wishes and I left.
Later, Desi woke you and he told you that Taylor was dead, right?
Yes, at 7:30 a.m. he told me that Taylor had died.
And you saw your wife's body before Detective Eisenberg came to the scene, correct?
Yes.
When the detective sifted through the scripts, Roses and Robots was yours. That be Exhibit C here, and you wrote this note, correct?
Yes, I did write that note.
Later the detective wanted to search your car, but you couldn't find the keys, correct?
Yes, they were not in their usual place.
So you couldn't find your keys even though you put them in the same place every day, correct?
Yes, I always put them in the same place, but for some reason they weren't there at that time.
When the detective unlocked your car, he found a golf club, correct?
Yes, it was Michael's golf club.
You bleached this club, correct?
Yes, I was cleaning it for when I would put it up in a display case on our wall.
Again, to this evidence. You said that the note on the evidence was just props you would need for the set, right?
Yes, that was the props that I planned on getting, so the scene would look really real.
And yet the things you got and prepared for Taylor were almost exactly the same, correct?
I had gotten her ready with a rose petal bath, and I did get a bottle of champagne to lighten the mood. Yes, correct.
Did you kill your wife?
No.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Witnesses dismissed. Does the defense have any other witnesses they wish to call? All right, Val Glick, approach the stand, please. Face the jury and raise your right hand. Val Glick, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, you may have a seat. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Val Glick.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
My name is Val Glick, and I'm currently 35 years old.
What is your main profession?
I am an actress. I have starred in 3 movies and have won several awards.
When did you meet Alex Matsumoto in between all of this?
I first met Alex Matsumoto when I acted in one of his movies. He was the first person to realize the potential I had to become a movie star. He is a very talented screenwriter to work with and an amazing friend.
What was your perspective between the bond of Alex and Michael's relationship?
Alex and Michael had a very close relationship. They often went on trips and did activities together. When I came into Alex's house, I always saw them laughing and having fun. And Michael liked me, and I sometimes took him to the driving range.
In January 2019, how bad did Alex take Michael's death?
Alex took Michael's death very hard. He often told me about the concerns he had for Taylor's grief and mental health.
Did you ever see Desi around the mansion?
Yes, we often watched movies together as a group.
What was Desi like around the mansion?
Desi was very dishonest. One time I saw her steal a tip that Alex had left for Quinn.
How did Taylor deal with Michael's death?
Objection, Your Honor. Irrelevant for her seeing Desi steal.
I believe that's a character. I'm going to overrule that because I feel like that speaks to the character question. So you may proceed with your new question.
How did Taylor deal with Michael's death?
Taylor spent most of her time in the master bedroom, and when she did come out, she seemed very out of it.
On June 7th in the evening, what did you do?
I went over to Alex's house to watch one of his genius, underappreciated movies.
How was Alex like during the film?
Alex looked very sad, which was weird because he usually laughed and made gestures at his own films.
Did Alex ever tell you what was wrong?
He said that he was worried about Taylor because she was upset on her way towards the meeting.
What happened at 10:30 p.m. that day?
I saw that Alex looked very tired, so I told him to get some sleep. Then I went on home.
What happened the next morning?
The next morning, I received a call from Desi informing me that Taylor had passed away.
Did you ever say or text anything to Alex right after that?
Well, when I received the call, I was on set, so I couldn't really get back to Alex during this time. But I sent him a text message saying that I was sorry for his loss. I don't remember if he ever responded.
Thank you. That is all. Boglik. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Does the prosecution have any questions for this witness? All right, you may approach.
Hello, Ms. Glick.
Hi.
I want to start with Alex's behavior. He is very demanding, yes?
He can be, yes.
In your witness statement, you said that he was especially demanding when it came to his autonomous devices?
Yes, because he wanted to achieve what it took.
And Taylor was against his startup, correct?
Sorry, what was that?
And Taylor was against his startup, correct?
I didn't really speak to Taylor that much, so I don't remember.
But she did create a group called Parents Against Autonomous Driving, right?
Yes.
Did this make Alex happy that his wife was working against him?
No.
And he really didn't want her to go to the Capitol Hill hearing, right?
Well, I never heard that.
Are you aware of the progress of Alex's startup? Is Taylor's PAD group helping his cause?
I don't think so.
And her hearing was just around the corner, correct?
Yes.
All the money he put into his startup was going to be wasted if Taylor didn't go to if Taylor did go to that hearing, correct?
Think so.
Taylor was the PAD's leader. She was the founder, and Alex didn't want her to go for the sake of his startup, right?
Yes.
The two often got into many disputes, right? The most recent one being about the hearing?
Yes.
So Taylor's work was giving Alex and his startup a lot of grief, right?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Prosecution may call another witness. Oh, sorry, defense, you may call another witness. Quinn Clampett? Quinn Clampett, you may approach. Face the jury and raise your right hand. Quinn Clampett, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, you may approach the stand.
Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. I am Queen Clampett. I am 60 years old, and I am a housekeeper for Alex.
How long have you known Alex?
I've known Alex for most of his life.
How did you meet Alex?
Well, I used to housekeep for his grandfather.
How long were you a housekeeper for Alex's grandfather?
I was a housekeeper for Alex's grandfather for over 25 years, and during that time I've seen him grow up into a great person.
How was yours and Alex's relationship?
It was really good, other than maybe he wouldn't take my suggestions sometimes.
How was Taylor's relationship with Alex?
It was really good when they first got married. They were so happy to get together. But then a tragedy happened, and the relationship just kind of fell apart.
You mentioned tragedy. What tragedy?
Well, Taylor's son Michael used one of Alex's autonomous vehicles and ran into a building, and he suddenly died.
Was there anything that they would do with Michael?
They would take him on Saturday activities and often return with either a gadget or a golf club.
What happened to the golf club after Michael died?
Well, I really don't know, but I bet they kept it in good shape.
How did Taylor treat Alex after Michael died?
Taylor was just horrible to Alex. She had so many outbursts towards him, and it was always towards Alex. And after a while, Taylor wouldn't talk to Alex, and after a while they moved rooms.
What were the most common arguments?
It was about Alex's startup and autonomous vehicles, and sometimes it would even be his entertainment district.
You mentioned that they moved to separate rooms.
Well, Alex was in the guest bedroom by the movie room, and then Taylor was in the master bedroom with a master bath, and yeah.
What did you clean in Taylor and Alex's mansion?
Well, I would clean their bathrooms, I would vacuum their carpets, I would dust all around the house, and I would even clean the master bedroom twice a week.
So after Taylor and Alex shifted rooms, did they still let you clean them?
Alex let me clean his room, but Taylor wouldn't let me clean her room because the door was always locked, so I could never get into the room.
How did Taylor feel about this?
Taylor would get mad at me and start yelling at me, but I kind of understood, and I knew she was having a hard time with Michael's death.
Was there anything unique about the master bedroom or bathtub? Bathroom.
Well, the bath had an in-ground tub, and it was about 6 feet wide, 7 to 8 feet long, 2 feet deep. Yeah.
What was around the bathtub?
Well, there was a trough that was about 2 feet long, a foot wide, and there was about a divider between the toilet and the bathtub that was about 5 feet tall and 8 feet long.
Yeah. No further questions, Your Honor.
Does the prosecution have any witnesses or any questions for this witness? You want to turn him down?
Yes, Your Honor. So, of all the rooms in the house you were allowed to clean, the office was not one of them, correct?
Correct.
This was because Alex had precious personal ideas?
Yeah, that I get he wouldn't want me to share.
So, before Michael's death, would you say Alex and Taylor had a good relationship?
Yes.
So after Michael died, would you say the relationship went smoothly?
No, it kind of fell apart.
So according to the outbursts Taylor had, would you say Alex reacted well to these outbursts?
No.
In your opinion, would having his wife yell at him whilst in grief over his son be enough to make Alex angry, possibly even angry enough to murder his wife?
No.
Yet given the circumstances, anyone put in Alex's position would at least be affected a small amount, right?
I guess.
So still, everyone has their limits.
Yeah.
So as Alex's housekeeper, you of all people would notice a change in Alex's personality over time, correct?
No.
Yet you did start to notice Taylor's aggressive behavior towards you and Alex, correct?
Yes.
Would you say Alex took kindly to these insults of his work?
No, but he still cared about Taylor.
Yet any ordinary person would not appreciate insults, correct?
Yes.
So with the added insults to Alex's internal injuries of grief, would you say it was enough to push Alex just a small amount too far?
No.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Witness is dismissed. I believe the defense has one more witness to call.
I will call Dr. Amari Wolpert.
Dr. Amari Wolpert, please approach. Right here, face the jury and raise your right hand. Dr. Wolpert, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, approach the stand.
Would you please introduce yourself to the court?
Yes. My name is Dr. Amari Wolpert.
What makes you qualified to do a case like this?
Well, this case is a very common case for me. I've done dozens of cases where the victim is intoxicated or drowned. I have a degree in biology, and in my professional opinion, I'm qualified.
This is said to be a drowning case in which Taylor died. and among other things of injuries, but they say the cause of death is drowning. Can you give us something on that based on your autopsy report?
Yes. In the autopsy report, we found when we examined Taylor's body, we found that it has, like every dead body, went through rigor mortis. Rigor mortis is a stiffening of the muscles that goes from 0 to 36 hours, and there are 3 stages, 0 to 8 hours, and then just more hours after that. By in drowning, we saw that her lungs were capacitated and foam was coming through her airways out of her mouth. And that's how we know she was drowning. Those are the 2 main symptoms of a drowning.
Okay, well, in Exhibit E, we see here on the back of Taylor's head and about the middle, we see a mark of here. Now, the leading examples of how that could have happened, said by both prosecution and defense, are both the Michael's Golf Club and the trough of the bathtub. On your own autopsy report, can you give us your idea on which one is correct or not?
Yes. Well, though it is likely for the golf club to hit her head, seeing that how it is almost the same size of it would not, a blunt force to the head is a very hard thing to pin down on what happened to it. It was a contusion on the back of her head, and a line going slightly slanted upwards, but the golf club most likely could not most likely be the murder weapon, in my opinion. I would say the trough of the bathtub is a way more likely death or thing to cause the contusion than the golf club.
And with the floor being slippery, which could she have fallen and be able to hit it?
Yes. In my autopsy, we saw the sketch of Taylor's body was drawn in a certain way where she would have fallen backwards and her head would have been positioned to hit the trough of the bathtub and then fall in the bathtub, either floating on her head or on her face.
And we've also heard Taylor had drank quite a lot of alcohol. What was the autopsy report on that?
Yes, well, Taylor had come home from her friend's house, I think, and when we examined her in the autopsy, we saw that her blood BAC, which stands for blood alcohol content, was 0.12. And that level of alcohol in her blood cannot cause death where she just dies from alcohol poisoning, but it can cause dizziness, maybe nausea, and it can cause the functionality of her motor skills and her balance to be all over the place.
So, in your own opinion, would you personally say that with the wet floor and the amount of alcohol she had drank and was in her blood system, is it possible that she'd be able to fall and hit her head on the trough?
It is not only possible, but it is the most plausible answer, I think.
And you also said about the rigor mortis. And you said there are 3 different stages of it. What would be the stage that you saw Taylor in?
Well, when we did the autopsy, it was around 10 a.m. after the night Taylor died. And she was still, so the rigor mortis stage is 0 to 8 hours. Some of the small muscles in her body will stiffen, but her body can still twitch and move slightly. Then 8 to 24 hours, the body completely stiffens, there's no moving, and then 24 to 36 hours, the rigor mortis starts to leave her, and if a body's in water, the rigor mortis can last for 72 hours. But the stage I saw her in was the 0 to 8 hours because her body was still twitching as we found her, So with more examination, we saw that Taylor's body was around maybe 6 hours away from 10 a.m., which would probably be around maybe 4 or maybe a lot more, like 8 hours. So maybe somewhere around 1 a.m., 2 a.m. is the time of death.
So you're saying that the most plausible time of death with the rigor mortis effect would be after 12 o'clock?
Yes, that is what I'm saying.
Okay, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Does the prosecution have any questions for this witness? All right, you may approach.
Good afternoon, Dr. Wilbur.
Good afternoon.
You and Dr. Jackson are from rival schools, right?
Yes, we are.
Dr. Jackson made the investigation first, right?
Yes, he did.
Now let's talk about Taylor's incident. Were her lungs at full capacity?
From what I remember, they were fully expanded. Water was filling them.
So do you think Taylor could have been hit with a blunt force object?
That could be a possibility, yes.
And Taylor was drunk, right?
Yes.
Did you even consider Taylor being hit with a blunt force object?
I did, yes I did.
If it was not a blunt force object, why did Taylor have a bruise on the back of her head and her skull having a fracture?
The skull fracture was behind her head, and in the autopsy that I took, she was falling backwards in her sketches. So another possible answer, and I think most plausible, would be her hitting the trough of the tub.
When Taylor drowned, she was facing the south, correct?
Yes.
If she was facing backwards, wouldn't her head be facing the north?
Well, if I remember right, the position of the bathtub is, when she fell, she hit the end of the bathtub, which would cause her to be facing south, so no.
So you're saying the only thing in the bathroom was the trough that could cause that injury?
No, wait, yes, that is what I'm saying.
Was Taylor's body still movable at 10 p.m.?
Yes.
Do you think that Taylor could have just blacked out when she slipped or was hit?
Yes, I think that is a very possible thing that could have happened, because a lot of times when people get hit in the head anywhere near the temples or maybe in the back of the head, they do get knocked out and maybe have a small concussion.
And Taylor's muscles were stiff when you examined her, right?
Yes, some were stiff, but I examined her around 10 a.m. and some of her body was twitching and moving a bit.
Do you disagree that Dr. Jackson's assumptions of death and rigidity are wrong?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
All right, thank you. We are now going to be listening to our closing arguments then. Would prosecution like to make their closing arguments at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you may approach the podium. You can turn the podium to face the jury if you would like.
As you have recently heard, Tyler Matsumoto was found dead in the master bathtub on the morning of June 8th. You also know that Alex Matsumoto lost his son because of the failure of his autonomous scooter. Tyler Matsumoto, his innocent, stressed out, and grieving wife, just couldn't stand to lose her son to the autonomous technologies she so disliked. Tyler antagonized Alex for his failures, and blaming him for the death of Alex's beloved son, she pushed him past the breaking point. Alex, who hated being known for failure, in her eye, hated his wife, his innocent wife, even more for reminding Alex every day of his failure in her eyes, and soon to be the rest of the autonomous world's eyes as well. Alex knew his precious work, even more precious than his not-so-precious wife, was in danger. Alex Matsumoto threatened the murder of his wife, and Alex Matsumoto even said, "Wouldn't it be too bad if Tyler never made it to the hearing?" Which brings us to the laws and witness testimonies we have given all of the following evidence, which shows beyond a reasonable doubt that this man, Alex Matsumoto, killed his wife willfully, deliberately, with premeditated thoughts and malice aforethought. As we heard from Detective Eisenberg, Tyler was still fully clothed, which would suggest sudden death and intentional death. We also heard from Detective Eisenberg that the golf club found in the car had been bleached to cover up the suspicion that it would have been used for a crime. This would mean that someone, the main suspect, needed to cover up their tracks, and the best way in their mind was to get rid of the weapon used to murder an innocent human being. Alex Matsumoto, that man, right in front of us here and now, murdered that innocent human being, his wife. Alex Matsumoto prepared a nice rose petal bath to create the alibi that this murder was merely an accident. Exactly the same as the murder script Alex wrote about a robot who kills his owner and creates a scene to make it look like an accident. The details are so exact, right down to the rose petal bath. This proves that Tyler Matsumoto's murder was willful, deliberate, and premeditated, as the charge of first-degree murder states all of these key factors must be present. We know from Desi Rogers that Alex hates being associated with failure, and if his wife went to testify about him, then he, in his eyes, would become one of the two things he hated, failure. This simple fact gives Alex even more motive and malice aforethought towards killing his wife. All of the facts and evidence line up so well that we see the murder of Tyler Matsumoto was committed willfully, deliberately, with premeditated plotting and scheming, as well as malice aforethought. Kind-hearted jury, I ask that you consider all of the evidence and stop Alex Matsumoto from playing golf with heads. Thank you.
Okay, you're going to need to speak pretty loudly, just so you know.
Start now.
Yep.
Love alone can be the single most powerful thing in the universe. Love. The same love that changed Alex. If a relationship is broken, it can tear you apart. But love also has the power to heal the most damaged relationships. Alex had this exact same unfailing love for Taylor, whom he cared about most dearly. Alex has been accused of murder with no valid proof behind it. Alex was an extremely passionate lover who went to very long lengths to please his spouse. Imagine seeing all of this love die in a matter of hours, seeing your dead wife, who you care so much about, gone. It must be horribly unimaginable. Alex demonstrates this love by how he is so quick to get along with and even marry Taylor. Alex and Taylor started just a year ago, both at humble beginnings, but Alex's outstanding love for all made him easy to connect with fast. After a very short while, their connection led to even a marriage. Taylor moved in with Alex, and with Taylor came her 16-year-old son, Michael. Alex treated this child like his own son, even though they weren't truly related by blood. Alex and Michael began to have a very close bond, just like Alex did with all of his other friends. Your Honor, that's reasonable doubt. A man capable of loving many in numerous ways could never be guilty of such a grievous sin. But almost all good stories have to come to an end, have to lead to something bad. Just a short while after living together, something truly tragic happened. Michael took the autonomous bike that Alex stated Michael was not allowed to take, and he sadly died from a crash. From this, Taylor decided to be irrational and blame Alex for the death of her son. But in the end, it was not Alex's fault, because he did not give Michael permission to take the bike, which was required by his standards. The more Taylor and Alex fought because of Taylor's unreasonability, the more Alex's grace seemed to multiply. Alex was so concerned about helping her that when she told him about her speech against autonomous vehicles in DC, he was fully supportive. Your Honor, that's reasonable doubt. A man that cared so much about his spouse that he wants to protect her at any cost is claimed to be the murderer of the same person? I think not. He even told her how much of a horrible shame it would be if she couldn't make it because he knew everyone would just love her there. Taylor went to a friend's house to discuss the meeting at DC the next day. Alex was also very aware that whenever Taylor came home from these parties and meetings, she was extremely drunk. After the fight they had, Alex really wanted to make up for it, to get rose petals and champagne and make up for it. When Taylor came home, she was so incredibly drunk that she couldn't even keep her balance and completely fell over, taking down a vase with her and shattering it. As Taylor had been walking in, Alex prepared a wonderful, soothing, rose petal bath to make up for what had happened. Signs yet again showed Taylor was incredibly drunk by her, also tipping over and shattering a wine bottle all in the bathroom with Alex. The spilled champagne made the floor extremely slippery and situations much worse, making a slip a lot more capable. If you look at Exhibit C, we can see that the broken bottle is next to the bathtub because she slipped into it and cracked that as well. When Alex also said to Desi everything is fine when she acted about it, which would have been hard for him to do and keep a cool attitude while doing something criminal. And then after that, Alex left the room and left Taylor alone in the room to bathe. I can't even begin to imagine the pain that Alex went through, looking at his wife's dead body lying in the tub the next morning. The thoughts were all rushing through his head, like, how did this happen? Who did this? My poor innocent beloved Taylor. The list could truly go on forever. The love that Alex gave and showed to his beloved spouse was unfathomable. The prosecution called themselves here today to prove this man guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, which they have not proven in the slightest. To prove Alex guilty, the prosecution must prove that the defendant is guilty of first-degree murder, which is the unlawful killing of another human that was willful, deliberate, premeditated, and with malice aforethought. All of these standards must be met to show true violation of murder in the first degree. How can all of them be met if not a single one was shown today beyond a reasonable doubt? To prove the unlawful killing of another, they tried to show you that the golf club hit to the back of the head was sustainable in killing Taylor. But you know what is also consistent to the wound to the back of the head? A more reasonable conclusion than cold-blooded murder, a fall into a faucet on the way down. As you can see, from the two exhibits, they could match all right. Your Honor, that's reasonable doubt. At this point, the defense is just playing the guess the measuring game. They also say he used the club to kill just because it was polished and had prints. But tell me honestly, is it unusual to wax or clean a club to have your prints on it or to have your prints on it? The answer is no. If Alex really did kill with the club, he wouldn't have told the detective he could search the garage with the club in it he had allegedly just used. Your Honor, that's reasonable doubt. On the top of that, they cannot in any way prove premeditation or malice aforethought. Malice is the mindset when the killing action is implied and surely wanted. How can someone who just prepared a loving rose petal bath and got their wife all these nice things have these thoughts flowing through their head? The answer is they can't. Premeditation means that the defendant has weighed the scales in their mind and decided to kill. How can someone who is going out buying flower petals and champagne truly be weighing the consequences of murder in their mind? The prosecution has been trying to prove to you that Alex is guilty of these things because he and his wife had many arguments and were apart beforehand. These fights did not break Alex away from Taylor. It just made him want to make things back to her all the more, which he did. A man with such deep love could not be possible of such a crime. They also have tried to show premeditation through the note on the roses and robots book that told Alex to get champagne and liquor. This doesn't help prove their point a bit. Let's start off with the facts of this piece was on The Office, and Alex had not been in the office for years. See Exhibit A to see it's connected to Desi's property. All these things in this office were old startup plans and old movie scripts of Alex's. Whenever someone of this would need to be accessed, it would be accessed by Desi, not Alex. On top of that, he also wrote this piece 9 years ago. So, Your Honor, tell me how a man that hasn't seen this piece for multiple years and hasn't written it or thought about it for 9 whole years could beyond a reasonable doubt be guilty of premeditation because of it. As also Alex says in his witness statement, the notes on the sheet were notes for the movie, and if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Normally if you have a movie script, you would write what props you need, and you would not be planning a murder 9 years in advance, which is absolutely preposterous. Our witnesses have shown you today that Alex was such an amazing friend and how he could never do such a thing. Doc Glick has shown you today that Alex is a very nice man who could never do such a thing and how Alex had such a strong bond with many. Quinn Clampett has shown you all the inconveniences and how Alex couldn't have done such a thing, along with how he was such a great friend. Dr. Amari has shown you that a fall in the faucet is a more likely outcome than being brutally murdered. Alex Matsumoto has shown you that he loved those around him in the certain circumstances he was in, which would make it nearly impossible for a sensible person to kill and have malice aforethought through these thoughts and actions. So tell me, jury, where's the lies? Where's the deceit? The prosecution is so keen in saying the defendant has. The answer is nowhere, because all there is love and trust. No lies here. The doubts have all been stacked up. They are presented at your feet, jury. A reasonable doubt cannot be allowed to make a guilty verdict. Alex stands here before you and could be facing a lifetime in jail just for loving his wife. So think about it. If you were in his shoes, what would you do? Cry for hours? Think about how your life led up to this? Because a loving, passionate man truly does not have the power to kill. Thank you for your time.
Well, at this time, it is now time for the jury to deliberate the charge of first-degree murder. The yellow bulletin that you have outlines a lot of the different aspects of that. If you feel like the prosecution has met their burden in all areas, beyond a reasonable doubt, then he would be guilty of first-degree murder. If you feel he has not met all areas of the charge beyond a reasonable doubt, he would be found not guilty. Obviously, this is a very weighty decision, given the large charge that we are dealing with. You are now going to be entering the time capsule, where 1 minute equals 1 hour. So if you take 10 minutes, we'll pretend it took 10 hours. So discuss as long as you need to, and I'll have a little more instruction for you when you arrive over there. When we arrive back, we'll have a decision. could you guys give?
Yes, in the event the jury comes back with a guilty verdict, we will need handcuffs on the defendant and be immediately taken to jail. Yes. So we deliberated for approximately 5 minutes. The jury came back with a unanimous decision of not guilty.